Okay. Hello. Hello again.
Hi.
I think we're both a little nervous here. I've been thinking about what I wanted to say about this show for a long time now, and I want to start off with just a basic definition of what it's supposed to be, and this is a safe space for all of us to whether you're an army brat or army spouse, or even if we end up bringing some retired service members or current service members on here. This is just a place to talk about the impact of service on everybody that's involved, and to share our stories about what it all means to us and what we've been through. Would you say that's a fair
Okay.
assessment?
I would say that's a fair assessment.
All right.
And to introduce myself and to give my take on the podcast and kind of the idea that I have for this in my head. But I have been around the military community pretty much my entire life. So I was actually overseas with Jesse. We went to General H.H. Arnold High School together. I went to Wiesbaden American Middle School. I have been to many different schools in my life, and then growing up, that's the one thing about the military child that a lot of people, they don't really talk about is the fact that we don't have a lot of connections growing up. Our cousins, our family, we very rarely, would get to see them. Sometimes we would have to travel all over the world. And so as we grow up, we find ourselves a little bit isolated. We don't have a lot of friends and we don't have a lot of space. And so really, I just want to share a space with people who have collective experiences that are similar, and that are similar because of the military community and how we all serve in our own unique way.
And yes, I actually forgot to introduce myself. I My name is Jesse, and I've been in the exact same situation all of my young life up through the age of 18. And when I was 7, we moved to Tokyo. I didn't know that it was Tokyo because it's so huge that there are all these different places that I thought were cities that were just prefectures. Okay, so I lived in the Kanagawa area in a place called Sagamihara. That was my first experience seeing a completely different culture, and um, that's probably the most exciting part about being a military brat is you don't get to just stay in your comfort zone. You get put into different places with different people and different cultures, and it's not all good. There's a lot of struggle that goes on there, especially if you're a young kid. Okay, the plus side is after Tokyo, we moved to Hawaii, and that was crazy. I got to learn a lot about their history and culture, and as we moved across the world, like you said, you don't get it. You make really strong connections because everybody is disconnected, so we all kind of commiserate that way. And um, but at the end of the day, you leave the system, you become an adult, and it's not like growing up in a small hometown. If you're one of the people who stay in your hometown, like you don't have that anymore, and you try to stay connected as best you can. And I can't imagine what it was like for people who came before us that didn't have the internet, that
Yeah.
couldn't really reconnect unless you kept up with addresses and sent letters and maybe a few pictures here and there. And it's it's sad in some ways, but in other ways, I feel like now we still come together. When I'm upset on Facebook, I mean, Amber here really just lifted me up, and
I
that's
reach out to people randomly
right.
that I knew from a long time ago. That's actually how this podcast got started. I reached out randomly to somebody I knew from a very long time ago.
But yeah, like you said, all of our cousins and everything else. Like I was really close to my cousins, especially because we left for Germany right when my grandmother died, and my cousins have often said, like we were really close, and then you just up and vanished, and we spent our entire childhoods apart. And it's like, yeah, um, but I honestly think there's a lot of good stuff that came out of all of this. Don't get me wrong. There's been some trauma, and we'll probably get into that at some point. But I want to keep I would prefer to keep it light for the first episode, and just talk about some of the cool stuff. Like like going to Germany. Okay, I hope you don't mind me talking too much, Amber, because
I don't, but whenever you say going to Germany, so just a funny story. I did not have a concept of different countries until I was about maybe 10 years old and we went over to Germany. Like I did not understand what different countries were because I came from the South, like Mobile, Alabama, the South. And I was born in South Carolina, and so I never really understood that concept. And so, yeah, when you talk about a culture shock, definitely a culture shock when you're 10 years old to understand this. There's other bodies of water, and there's like these land masses out there, and yeah, so, giving away a blonde moment there.
well, I mean, like I had the advantage of like when I got to Germany, I was already pretty much I had just turned 15, okay, and but like you said, the culture shock when we first got to Japan, like my only like impression of an Asian culture was what I saw in like Disney cartoons and Looney Tunes, okay, which is incredibly caricaturistic of all of that. And as a little kid, that kind of you kind of make these assumptions, and then you go there and see it, and you're like, okay, it's kind of like my hometown, except for I can't see the horizon because there are buildings everywhere and nobody looks like me. Um, so
Well, when I first went, like I've never been to Disneyland in the United States, but we went to Euro Disney on a band trip, and I remember seeing like the French Mickey Mouse, and he, talked like a very gruff French male who smoked about like 15 packs a day. It wasn't the hoo-ha, it was the, like just a deep guttural sound coming from Mickey Mouse. And then you learn that, Santa's not always fat and jolly. You learn that when you go to Germany. There's other little things you learn about cultures and things like that.
I
But
mean,
it's definitely amazing experiences.
speaking of Father Christmas, I saw Father Christmas in Austria, and they had him. He had like the Pope hat on and everything, and I'm like, that is different. Okay, like, oh man, and can I tell you, when okay, because I had been living in the States because we went from Japan to Hawaii, Hawaii back to Texas, then to Germany again, and there was this formative like all of puberty in between, right? So I got kind of comfortable being back in America, and then we're at the American Arms Hotel, and I turn on the TV, and there's like force protection infomercials, okay, and I'm like, oh my God, we're back to this, and then the AFRTS logo comes up, and I'm like, oh man, TV is gone. I'm back. I mean, not that AFRTS was bad, but like it was just one of those things. Like, oh man, I don't have Nickelodeon anymore.
No, I remember when everybody else was growing up with all of like the popular sitcoms and everything else, we had AFN, and we had the AFN commercials. If you remember the AFN commercials with the kindness, pass it on. And then, there was one that was like, look, a cheese puff. That was trying to keep kids off of drugs, and so even some of the television over there, it was strictly supervised because it was either AFN, or then if you lived on, the German economy like we did, we would have, your British shows, and then we would have German MTV. Like those were the only English speaking shows. And so I actually ended up picking up a lot of German and a lot of the language just by watching the Teletubbies, believe it or not. So that was, how I kind of adapted when we first got over there. But yeah, it's just like I said, it's a lot of different things, a lot of shared experiences um, that are definitely unique, especially when growing up, that a lot of people don't have the ability to. So it's definitely an amazing thing. There's pros and there are cons, right? So
Well, I mean, as far as far as the media, I remember because we were there in the thick of like 9/11, post 9/11, like engagement in the Middle East. And at one point, like, cause I love the radio, like they had the like the long drive where they were like playing heavy metal and stuff for all the soldiers that were driving home. And like at one point, I think it was around like early 2002, we were driving home, we're listening to this song, and then everybody in the car turns to each other and says, this is the story of a girl, because they were literally playing the same day every day
9 days.
on
Yes.
repeat because they had nobody there to actually run the radio station. It was just kind of on a loop, so we already knew
Yeah.
what songs were coming up.
Oh yeah, and then they did that at the commissary and everything too. And then it was funny because there was also, if you remember, the year Titanic came out overseas, that song was such a #1 hit, like globally. They played it all the time to where the Germans just got so frustrated at the song. They'd be like, "And #1 again is Celine Dion's My Heart Will Go On," and then like the whole entire show would blip off. Like they wouldn't even show it in the credits. Like they just got tired of hearing it. Um, but yeah, no, I got the chance to go back to Germany because I had married an active duty service member that I have recently divorced from. But when we were back over in Germany, we were actually in Grafenwehr, and that's a little bit different because it's the difference between Hochdeutsch and Bayerisch, because you take the three different dialects from the Czech Republic, from Germany, and the Hochdeutsch, and you mix everything together, and it's a different dialect altogether. So it's a little bit different.
Well, yeah, I mean it's like Maltese, like where
Mm-hmm.
it's not quite Arabic, but it's not quite, you know what I mean? Like, and there's a lot of
Well, that's the one thing that always really fascinated me. And I think that I really started getting fascinated about the evolution of languages just in learning German and actually getting the opportunity to go to Germany at such a young age. Because if you start to look at the history between the Berlin Wall, the East and the West, and when the Berlin Wall actually came down, for a long time, East Germany, it was, and the only way I could describe it, and that I have heard it described, and it was the best accurate like picture of it, was that East Germany was black, white, and neon after the fall of the wall, because you had all of these bright advertising companies that were going in there, but technology was so declined because of the socioeconomic status of the East German government at the time. And so when you see the evolution of language in that, there is a definite distinction between East German and the West German dialect as far as in the way that the language is spoken. And a lot of that had to do with the technology disadvantagement, I should say, that was caused from the Berlin Wall.
And I actually love because of my time in Europe, I love studying the origins of different words in all of these different languages because I've studied I've lived with when I was taken in by a family originally from Mexico when I was in Alaska, so I learned a lot of Spanish. I studied Russian in college. Germany, I lived there, so I picked up quite a bit of German. I studied French for 4 years. I lived in Japan and picked up quite a bit because I was really, really young. So of course you absorb that like a sponge, right? So it's and people look at me like I'm weird around here because they'll say something and I'm like yeah, like what that's like French origin and it means basically just the definition of what you would call it in English anyway. So and they're like okay and I'm like just sorry. Like this is it's something that it's always intrigued me because it helped me like survive and communicate with everybody around me because
Oh, yeah.
like you go to like I said I've been to Austria and it's not exactly German that's being spoken there, but if you know German you can kind of get by.
Well, it's a Germanic. It's the difference between your Germanic-based languages.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, no, you're absolutely 100% correct. And see, and it was so funny because even like starting to travel at a very young age, the one thing I made sure that I learned and I picked up here and there on little pieces of the language, or different languages. No, I'm not fluent by any means. I would consider myself proficient in German, not proficient in speaking. Proficient meaning if I hear it, I understand it, I can write it. Speaking, sometimes it comes and it goes. Uh, so I'm not fluent by any means, but I definitely understand the language. Um, I honestly forget where I was going with that. What was I talking about before I went off on a tangent about the German language again?
Oh man, I don't know and
I space out, and I apologize for that for you guys who listen to me ramble.
I am the exact same way. I am, mentally disorganized but articulate. So that means that we tend to start here, end up here, and then at the end of it, we're like, "What were we talking about? Oh, it was here. It's not. It was actually over here." But anyway, um,
Oh, yes, no, that's what I was talking about. Okay, thank you for jogging my memory. So, what I made the point to learn in 13 different languages because I thought that no matter where I ended up, it was going to be the one universal phrase I needed to know, and that was, "Where's the bathroom?" I can still currently say, "Where's the bathroom?" in about 13 different languages. And it has actually proven a very useful skill to have, believe it or not.
well, I don't know the exact I knew the word please in Japan, and I knew san manjo. Okay, so san manjo kudasai. I run around screaming that when I have IBS. And it's been a problem since I was a kid. So everywhere I went, and like like donde está el baño, stuff like that.
Yeah. So, and I forget which class it was. I forget if it was in Mr. Farrell's class or if it was in Frau Powell's class, but my brother, and eventually we will get my brother in on the podcast as well. But my brother, one time, he had a German oral exam that he had to give in front of class. And so he gets up in front of class and he starts grabbing his stomach and making like these excruciating, like I'm in pain noises, like, oh my God, like I'm, and the teacher looks at him concerned because my brother, everybody who knows my brother was just the sweetest, straight A, like cleanliest, conservative kid, you could ever have. And my brother, it was so funny because they look at him and they ask him what's wrong. He goes, "Ich habe Durchfall," which translates into "I have like this really chronic diarrhea." It was something that he had learned from our German neighbors. And oh man, I don't remember what the teacher and all said about that, but that was a story that I do remember because our German neighbors, they taught us the good German, but they also taught us the bad German when we were over there having to get by.
Well, what I thought was funny, like we used to crack up my neighbors because we would sit around talking in broken German with them, and we would say something like, um, instead of, I don't even know how to pronounce the word for finish in German, but like their little dialect was faddish, okay, is how they pronounced it. And my brother corrected somebody with that pronunciation, and my landlord just doubled over laughing, and I was like, what's so funny? And she's like, that's how we say it. That's like farm town pronunciation.
Wow. See, and I don't know. It was just it's funny. I I have learned bad things. I have told people to say bad things in German. I'm not gonna lie.
Ich hab Scheiß in meinen Hosen.
Nice. Um, anyway,
Sorry,
but
that was probably a little bit too blue for the podcast, but
no, it's
that
just it's the little things that you remember.
well, like
And
I learned that because I was at a festival and this little girl turned around and like screamed that at her dad, and
oh wow.
I was like, oh, okay.
So the one thing about learning, different languages and things and how that's actually helped me, even in my career, when I was first in management, I had an employee and she was actually completely deaf. And she only spoke in sign language. And I worked with Goodwill. And one of the things that I learned so I could actually speak with her on her level was I actually started to learn sign language. And I will never, ever, ever forget because I slipped up my signs one time. And instead of saying thank you, I went completely under chin instead of saying thank you. And I will never, ever forget the look on her face. And she just looked at me and she said, "That's bad." And she smacked my hand. And I said, "Oh no," realizing what I had done. So,
It's funny you mentioned sign language and Goodwill. Like when I worked there, one of our regulars, her mother, who was in her 80s at the time, was completely deaf, been deaf her whole life, and I
yeah.
learned sign language specifically to interact with her because she just kind of kept to herself, like this is my lot in life. Nobody's really going to talk to me, and so I started out by telling her thank you every time she came through, and she just looked so amazingly happy. And when sign language, I feel like is something, it's like Esperanto, but more useful. Nah, I'm okay. Anyway, that's not a hot take. That's a joke, people. Okay, like like,
Start raising an eyebrow. Should we be concerned, Jesse?
but
Like,
no, like
hmm.
I have a godson who's nonverbal spectrum autistic. Okay, and I've got a niece that is also nonverbal. And let me tell you, those kids before they learn sign language, you have to understand how frustrating it is for them. Like my godson would scream and throw everything around in the kitchen, and all he wanted was more juice. He just didn't know how to say it. But we taught him more, and like overnight, it became, instead of him throwing a fit, he would bring us his juice cup and go, and then go and sit down and wait for juice. And I was like, oh my god, like you know, and that's not even anything to do with well, I guess it kind of is, because it kind of ties back into like learning to communicate with everybody around us as military brats, and all of the different places we ended up.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. And like I said, it's just collectively, it's helped us in a lot of ways in the fact that we're well-rounded. And what I found mostly, I think, about working with a lot of military brats and a lot of military connected individuals, a lot of us, and I can't remember the exact statistic, and I think I pulled it once before, but I forget the source that I pulled it from, in all honesty. But it was something along the lines of about 56% of military brats will either join the service or actually have a spouse that is actually service related in some way, shape, and or fashion. So it's like, we grow up with the life and then we marry into the life, or we go ahead and we join in our father's footsteps in X, Y, and Z. And so, a lot of it has made you well rounded in the fact that we can work where people are, because we've had to be diplomats in a lot of different areas. Some of us have had to be diplomats in wartime settings with, countries who were very, very close to full on dispute or X, Y, and Z. And so when you have, tensions high like that, and, other things, that go on in that type of community, it makes for a very balanced individual, even though as we get older, we find ourselves a little more isolated, I think, than other individuals, if that makes sense.
And you were talking about going back to Germany. I went back in 2006 for my brother Jordan's graduation, and
Yeah.
it just so happened the World Cup was going on at the same time, which
Oh, wow.
I want to tell my mom and dad thank you for buying those tickets last minute, because that could not have been cheap. Okay. Um,
Yeah.
and I got there, and it was like everything that I loved about being in Europe, but like ramped up to 10, because like I basically went to a bar, and I had beers with a group of guys. We had a guy from Uganda, we had a guy from
Yeah.
Australia, we had a guy from uh, from Korea, Japan, like, and we were all just kind of hanging out, and like we only like knew little bits and pieces of what we were all saying, but we were having beers, watching soccer on TV, and just everywhere you went, it was just all kinds of people, and I was like, this is what I'm most grateful for, is being able to not take um, that coming together of cultures for granted, because it oftentimes, and you can, I'm not going to start pulling historical data, but like historically, that's not a thing that happens. Okay. And I just feel
Yeah, no,
grateful to.
I've been told, I have been told repeatedly by my sister Amber, don't start quoting obscure history facts. So I'm going to stop trying to quote obscure history facts. Sometimes I can't help it though.
Yeah, I
Because
mean,
while you like the origins of words, I go for the origins of sayings. Like, for instance, why is it said, and for some reason in the South, when the sun is shining and it's raining, the devil is beating his wife? Don't look a gift horse in the mouth. Well, that actually originated from Helen of Troy, in the Spartans. There, when people say bless you when you sneeze, that was actually came from like 16th century Enlightenment stuff, because they used to be afraid that demons were escaping from your nose, and so they would say God bless you super super quick, so they didn't actually jump back in.
And it really,
I
I
like
mean,
this.
every time there was any kind of disease outbreak, that it became even more of a thing. And like rest in peace,
Yeah.
like rest in peace. And I kind of, I'm not going to get into everything that's going on in the world right now because that's not what this is about. But we were having this discussion about the phrase "rest in peace," and we're like, yeah, some people don't deserve rest, and it's like, no, 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 dude, slow your roll, because like historically, rest in peace in war, that is said to one's enemies because you want them to not be vengeful towards you because neither one of you had any say in it. You're all fighting these fights based on things that are directing you from whether it's government or whatever else. Okay, and it's basically an acknowledgement of this whole situation is terrible, and I hope you have peace after what happened to you. And it's just little things like that. Um, when it comes to sayings, like people just it gets missed. The historical context gets missed, and it's I feel like we have an advantage from where we came from. Like our instructors, our teachers in school and stuff, uh, really brought a lot of that into perspective, and I think that was smart on their part because it helps us kind of understand our our loose connection to everything, to the culture around us, all of the
Yeah.
cultures, especially in a place like Europe. There's so many cultures all in one spot. Um, and it kind of helps us understand our shared humanity, you know?
Oh,
Um,
absolutely. Absolutely. See, that is the other thing that I remember as well, are the humanity studies. There's a lot of humanity studies in Germany, and a lot of that is just because of World War II history. But um, you definitely get to see a different side of human nature just to begin with. And if you've ever actually gotten to step and actually look at Nuremberg or any of the places along those lines, um, it's a different experience altogether. Let's just put
yeah.
it that way.
Well, and I mean, we get to see firsthand evidence, as
Oh yeah.
kids. Like there are people that grow up in the states that are led to believe that the numbers of the Holocaust were inflated, and it's like I've been to the memorials, I've seen the piles of bones and skulls inside the
Right.
memorial, like it's not inflated, and that's just the people that they couldn't recognize after the
Oh
fact,
yeah.
you know.
Well, my brother and I, and it was funny because we were hiking somewhere, and I forget where we were hiking, but we found an old World War II bunker that hadn't been touched or nothing. Like, we just left it alone. We're like, we don't know what this is because we were just randomly in the woods,
And when
you
when
know.
and that's the thing is when you're out there in places like that, they tell you don't deviate from the path because there could be like landmines and stuff out there that have
Exactly.
been there for like almost 100 years at this point. Like
Hmm.
you might want to go exploring, but it's probably not the healthiest decision you're going to make, you know.
Oh
Um,
yeah. And then when you go to Verdun, you can actually still see where the land is still. Um, oh goodness, what's the word that I'm looking for? You can tell where the trenches were, let's just say, and where they had actually still covered them over, because you can actually see the mounds and everything else. So it's different when you can actually see the geography, let's put it that way, and how it messes with the topography,
well,
I
yeah,
guess the
it's
word
like
that I'm looking for,
like
topography.
kids in America, they might have had the advantage of having a consistent environment, but like they read about history. Like we actually went out and saw it. Like Miss Stockton
Yeah.
and everybody else, they brought us to the Maginot Line. They showed like we got to go inside it and see how those people lived, and it it's one thing to just say, oh, okay, it was a war, it was political and this and that, and it's like, no, there was a human toll, and there was a lot more to it than just, the Maginot Line was a wall and the Germans went around the wall to defeat it, like
Yeah.
like and
Yeah.
I am really grateful for that. I mean, there's some other things that I'm less grateful for, But I don't really want to get into that right here and now. It's
We're
just
keeping this light, Jesse. Don't make me smack
we
you.
are keeping it light. I'm just gonna say like the being exposed to like the direct like deployment. Everybody's parents suddenly just evaporated after 9/11 because they were all getting
Yeah.
sent off to God knows what, and like that's scary. Even as a young adult. Okay, I think I was maybe 16 or 17 when that happened. I'm 40 now, so I've blocked most of it out at this point, but you know, I forget her name, but I was like when they were announcing it on the intercom at school that you know the president had decided to deploy us. I was crying and shaking, and she said, "Now, are you scared? Are you angry?" And I'm like, "I don't know. I don't know what this is." You know?
Mhm.
I mean, and anyway, we'll get into that another time because that's a whole other can of worms.
Oh yeah. That is the one thing that I will tell you. I have seen a base shut down in 2 seconds. And that was during 9/11 and getting stuck on that bus. Cause I think you and I actually got stuck on the same bus because we got stuck on that bus for about 6 hours.
And we didn't know why.
Um,
We had no clue
yeah,
why. Nobody told us anything, and then I
everything just kind of blacked out. The base shut down. And then before we knew it, we saw like barbed wire. They told us we couldn't get out of the bus and like they're putting up fencing. And it's like, what's going on?
well
Like,
I finally get home, right, and because I we weren't allowed. Okay, we weren't allowed to have cell phones. Mine was at home. Okay, we weren't allowed to have
well,
cell
this
phone.
was before, I mean, really cell phones. This was
I had
2001.
I had like the little flip phone with the little extendable antenna that you had to pay 10 euros for 10 minutes or whatever it was. I don't remember, but it was for
I don't
emoji.
know. I didn't get my first cell phone until I was like 19 or 20.
Oh man,
So
no, like I got home and I flipped it open and I called Miss Levens. I think it was Miss, or
I
was that?
remember
I think that
this.
was the anniversary of 9/11. I called Miss Levens because like I got home, it was late. Well, not late, but it was already dark, and
Miss
nobody was
Levens, I
home.
love Miss
And I'm like,
Levens.
oh my God, what is going on? Nobody's home. And I called. Oh, that's right. I called my mom, and she's like, yeah, a whole bunch of stuff got blown up in the States, the Pentagon, the Twin Towers, and I'm like, what? She's like, yeah, I'm stuck at whatever Air Force base, and like she was there for like half a week. Like we couldn't get her off the base because everything was just kind of shut down, you know?
Oh yeah.
And and then like the next year, 2002, I come home and there's nobody home. And I freak out and I called Miss Levens and I was like, what's going on? Please tell me everything's okay. And she's like, whoa, what's good? I was like, it's September 11th and nobody is home right now. And she kind
Yeah.
of calmed me down, but like, ugh.
Oh yeah. No, trust me. Like I said, it was definitely a different time. It was definitely a different time. Um, but we will get into those stories on a different day.
Yeah,
We're
I think
not
we should
talking
go
about
ahead and
those
wrap it up
stories.
here. We're just over 30 minutes. I don't think we really need to do any editing. I think we kind of handled it off the cuff, and we'll continue to do so because that's just how we roll here. That's how we decided we
Absolutely.
wanted to do this, and
And the thing is, we're going to have different people coming in every week. So, yeah, we're gonna tell a whole bunch of stories and just kind of sit around a campfire. So hopefully people will enjoy listening to us just shoot the breeze for to put it nicely.
well, until then, I just wanted to thank everybody who tuned in and stayed for the duration. We thank you so much. We're going to keep doing this. We've got a website that's in the process of being built. It's currently in alpha. I'm very proud of it because I hand coded all of it myself. The artwork is generative AI. I've already had this like this justification rant that I went on with Amber the other day where she told me to calm down. Um,
And I will vouch for Jesse's work. Jesse has done some amazing work on the website, because ultimately what all of this will culminate into, Better Bittner Business, for business consulting, trying to get businesses off of the ground, going into entrepreneurship. We provide training, we provide, assistance with access to capital, we provide X, Y, and Z to help you get your business off the ground. And so, we are building that out currently. Right now, we do have capabilities for financial consulting. We also have the capabilities for business planning, developing a marketing plan, actually graphic branding and design. So definitely reach out if growing your business is something that you're interested in.
Yeah, and as we close out here, I just wanted to give you an update. I've been working on the business network page. We're going to be able to list businesses and have them all classified into different sectors, and even have if they're multiple sectors, like if it's a catering business, that's technically transport and food service. So they're going to all be tagged, and there's a widget that I've built with nice little pop art icons. You're going to be able to click it, and it will hide everything that is not exactly what you're looking for. And all of
Hey,
that is done without access to any other external files other than the JavaScript that is linked in the HTML. So
Jesse, don't give away all of our trade secrets.
yes, well I'm not giving away the actual code. Okay,
Okay.
the actual code is really simple. I like to keep it simple because anyway, we'll leave it here. Thank you everybody. Did you have anything else you wanted to say, Amber?
No, but we all know about keeping it simple. There's a certain military acronym, right?
Yes. Oh man.
Either way, with that being said,
I'm happy. This is exciting.
I think so too. I
It's
think so
great to see a
too.
smile on your face today too. So I'm gonna go
Not
ahead
all
and
doom and gloom.
we'll do this deconstruction, this thing where we just kind of look at the camera. This is where I'm gonna fade out.
Oh goodness, I feel like this is going to be
Okay,
the glamour shots, like with the stars, like
I'm gonna
going
hit
back to PowerPoint graphics here.
I'm gonna stop the
Fly in,
recording now.
look like a star.